Minister says there's nothing conclusive in the data that shows we would have to deviate from the roadmap out of lockdown. Under the current plans, all restrictions in England would be lifted on the 21st of June.
But at the same time, as concern over the Indian variant continues to grow, the government isn't ruling out a return to local lockdowns. Leicester has spent longer than any other under coronavirus restrictions, any other area under coronavirus restrictions. Joining us now is Shadow Health Secretary Jon Ashworth, who represents Leicester South. Jonathan, people at home now, they've got holidays booked. They might be flying out today. They might be flying out tomorrow. What would be your advice to people right now? Would you be saying it's safe and it's right for them to go on holiday?
I mean, personally, I wouldn't be going on holiday, but it's obviously up to individuals to make their own choice. If the government are saying to them, look, there are these countries where it is safe to visit. Of course, the government have also put a number of countries on the so-called amber list, but are saying don't visit there. So they're effectively on the red list. I mean, you mentioned Leicester. Leicester was the city that was in lockdown the longest. I mean, our spirits were lifted by winning the FA Cup on Saturday, of course, but it's been really tough locally across Leicester. It's been tough for businesses, it's been tough for restaurants, for bars, for people who've not been able to see their loved ones or for a period not even socialise with their loved ones in the back garden.
Can I just establish, Jonathan Ashworth, because we're always trying to pin Labour down on policy. One of the accusations, of course, in the most recent elections was that voters didn't actually know what Labour stands for. What is your policy on foreign travel? Do you agree that foreign travel for leisure purposes should be allowed right now?
I don't think it was sensible to open up in the way on international travel for leisure in the way that we did this week. I would have paused on that. And of course, we've also said we should have proper controls at the borders. Our borders have been about as secure as a sieve throughout this, which is why, sadly, these new variants have managed to find their way in and spread with such speed and severity across the country.
OK, so considering a lot of people are desperate for a holiday, I can imagine a lot of frontline workers might be desperate to get away, and some destinations might be cheaper than trying to find accommodation here right now when we're all, desperately trying to have staycations. So when would you open up foreign travel to, for instance, the green list countries where the incidence of COVID is much lower than it even is here?
Well, I would want us to spend a little bit of time reassuring ourselves that we've got on top of this particular variant and really, really contain it. And what I would do to contain the variants, to come to your point that you say, well, Labour never has any policies or ideas, as it were, I would put in surge vaccination into those areas where we know the variant is spreading quickly. That means vaccinating everybody. I would pay people decent sick pay and isolation support. So if you're ill, you can isolate yourself.
Just on that, John, let's talk this through. I mean, they are doing some surge vaccinations, but how would you do that? Are you talking about prioritising vaccines to certain communities? So who would miss out? Who would you prioritise in this surge vaccination strategy?
I think if you've got an area like Bolton or Blackburn where we understand the prevalence is so high, I would just get on now and just vaccinate everybody. Yeah. Because what we know is, this variant spreads more quickly, and unless you get on top of it, it will spread across the country. So that is what I would do. So I'd say the rest of us, you're sort of asking, well, who loses out? Well, it's in all our interests to really stamp down on this variant now. So if that means the rest of us waiting, a few days or a week longer, I think that's in the interests of the country.
But the fact is, Jon Ashworth, when the government came out with their restrictions and their system, they told us about this. Labour didn't complain at the time.
About the restrictions?
Yeah.
No, we didn't. But that's because, but this is a new variant that's emerged.
So you would have done exactly the same thing that they're doing, pretty much.
No.
What would you have done? What would you have done? What would you have put in plan in preparation in advance? What would you have done differently when those restriction plans were placed to you? Labour didn't seem to oppose them at all.
Sick pay. We still haven't started sick pay in this country.
How is sick pay going to stop Indian variants coming in or people travelling to greenest countries? I mean, I don't. That's nothing to do with it, is it?
No, sick pay is nothing to do with people travelling. No, that you're right.
Yes, I'm talking about travel restrictions. You can come out with sick pay because that's something you want to talk about, but we don't want to talk about that right now. We're talking about the travel. How would you put a stop to the Indian variant coming into this country?
Well, I beg your pardon. I thought you were asking me about all the restrictions. I didn't appreciate you were being specific about travel restrictions.
Well,
on travel restrictions, we would have put India... Well, to be frank, we would have had tougher border controls from the start. And we would have put India on the red list much sooner. We don't understand why India wasn't on the so-called red list at the same time that Pakistan and Bangladesh went on the red list. And for that period when India wasn't on the red list, a number of travellers entered the country from India, and many of them will have brought this variant with them and seeded it in communities across the country. But the question now is or the question for policymakers now is, how do you stamp down on it? Because, it's here now. It is, in that respect, it is what it is. So you've got to do vaccination, but you do have to do sick pay, because you've got to give people the support and the security to be able to take themselves out of work for 2 weeks or so and stay at home.
Would you, just having a look at what we could do differently when it comes to travel, so the Labour Party would not have recommended lifting restrictions on going abroad, going for holiday purposes, to a green list or amber list of countries at all? Until what point?
Well, I think we would have been better to pause, but I can't
say
I would have given you...
So under a Labour policy, when might we have been able to go abroad? Because I wonder whether there is a different system, which is that you don't have a green list, you allow people to go abroad, but you still require them to quarantine when they come back, or you back a vaccine passport, and nobody is allowed to travel for leisure until they've had the vaccination.
Well, at the moment, I would have paused this week until we know where we are with this variant. More broadly, I do think
Just check. How long would you pause for? You said that a few times. Do you mean a few weeks? Do you mean months? Do you mean the entire summer? How long would you pause for?
Well, you'd hope until you're confident that you're on top of this variant, which I would have thought ought to be. If you do it well, it could be in a matter of weeks. But you've always got to be... The mistake that politicians make throughout this whole crisis is to attach themselves to a particular date, when you've always got to look at the data, because you've always got to look at the prevalence of the virus, the trajectory, where it is growing, where it is not growing. So you've always got to be guided by that data. But I would have been cautious and paused this week. Of course, you do actually need better controls at the borders more generally, because, as I say, our borders have been like a sieve. That's why we've had some of these problems. Why did India go on the red list so late? All these things have brought us to where we are today. But in some ways, we are where we are now. We've got to take the measures to get on top of it now.
And while you back surge vaccinations in the areas affected, why don't you back a vaccine passport for those people who want to travel?
I think in the end, we'll all have to, well, certainly in the next 12 months, maybe not for the rest of our lives, but I anticipate we'll probably all have to show our vaccine status for international travel. The problem at the moment is that the virus is circulating hugely, massively across the world. The WHO is warning that worldwide we're having a worse second year than the first year. Because of vaccination here, we've managed to broadly and generally push it down quite considerably. That's not the case everywhere at the moment. So, and that's why it's so important we do have tougher border controls, because another variant may well bounce back at us and set us back a little bit.
Can we just talk about the general mood around the Labour Party at the moment? You've taken a real severe beating 2 weeks ago in the local elections and the mayoral elections. Like you probably didn't expect it to be as bad as it turned out to be, but it was. But just in the last 2 weeks, we still haven't heard any policy to come from the Labour Party. That's the crucial bit of information that has always been missing. The only thing we have heard is that Keir Starmer is going to do a TV show, and he's going to do a bit of a long interview, which is all very lovely. But what about actual policy? Have you guys even sat down and decided what Labour now will stand for the next few years as we head towards a general election and in years to come? I
think he's doing the long interview with Piers, isn't he? I've read in the paper.
He's doing live stories.
With Piers. So we'll all definitely be tuning in, won't we? It was a tough set.
I don't know whether you meant that or not, but anyway, carry on.
I'll be tuning in. Right, okay. Won't you?
Of course.
Be tuning in.
Yes, of course.
I'll definitely be tuning in. Sorry, my hair's wet from being outside in the rain. I'll definitely be tuning in. It's throwing it down out there. It was when I walked in anyway. Right. It was a tough set of elections, shocking set of elections, really. And the Labour Party, we've got to pick ourselves up, we've got to dust ourselves down, and we have got to start talking to the British people about the issues that matter to them.
But have you guys sat down yet and decided what policy? Have you spoken to Keir Starmer? Have you sat in a room and gone, right, guys, what does the Labour Party stand for? Have you had that conversation yet?
Well, of course we have our shadow ministerial, our shadow cabinet meeting.
Can you share it with us then? What does the Labour Party now stand for?
I can't. They're confidential meetings. I can't.
Confidential meetings. You're a political.
Share it with voters.
It's very clear. The Labour Party understands that we have got to speak to the British people about their priorities and their interests and their concerns, and we're launching a big policy review which we're going to take to the country, and we're going to engage the country in a discussion and a debate, and we're going to listen to the country about what it is they want, how they want this country to change. Because when I travel across the country, and I see it for myself in my own Leicester constituency and where I live in Leicester, that we can do much better than we're doing at the moment. Our schools can be much better. Our NHS can be much better. We've got nearly 5 million people on the waiting list. We need to sort that out. We can do much better to make the air that we breathe cleaner and our communities greener, and we can do more to invest in making our communities safer, and we've got to do more in the economy so people have well-paid jobs, not relying on low-paid temporary work or 0 hours contracts so they can buy their own home.
All right.
These are big issues that we're going to be focusing on in the weeks and months ahead.
Okay.
It is ironic, though, isn't it, Jonathan Ashworth, when you say we need to tell the electorate what we stand for, but we can't yet because it's confidential.
Well, I was talking about the particular meeting, but I mean, look, we are going to be having a big policy review with the country, and of course the meetings aren't that confidential. That was more of a sort of throwaway comment. But look, we're having a big policy debate and discussion with the country, and you'll see Labour coming out with exciting ideas.
OK. Jonathan Ashworth, thank you very much. And yes, congratulations to Leicester on winning the FA Cup. Fantastic, great club, and it was great to see last week.
We'll let you go and have a meeting with your hairdryer. Thanks very much.
In confidence.